Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, March 24th, 2021, for our monthly public educational meeting at Los Angeles Norml. Today, we have another great program for you with some very exciting guests. To honor Women's History Month, we thought it would be appropriate to bring out the female members of our board of directors and hear from them what they're working on in the cannabis industry and what motivates their involvement. Today, we are also very excited to welcome back Shelly McKay as a returning guest. Shelly has been a leader in cannabis education, destigmatizing the plant, and a very early proponent of California's SB 34 legislation, enabling her to push forward on compassionate care for our veterans. So I'm going to get off camera as quickly as possible today and turn the show over to these amazing ladies who are waiting in the wings to meet you. But before we get started with that educational portion of our program today, I'd like to recognize the whole team here at Los Angeles Norml, who is truly responsible for everything that we do. I'd also like to let you know that Los Angeles Norml is an all-volunteer, nonprofit organization. So it's important to remember that everyone on the team here is volunteering their time to push forward with the much-needed reform to our cannabis laws here in Los Angeles, California, and at the national level. And we would really appreciate you supporting us back. Please consider becoming a card-carrying member of Los Angeles Norml for only $4.20 a month. And we're dropping that link in the chat window now. So a quick introduction on the team. Our team consists of the legendary Bruce Margolin, who founded Los Angeles Norml in 1973, and he is our Director Emeritus. Elisabeth Mack, RN, is our Director of Health and Wellness. Hirsch Jane is our Director of Government Affairs. Stephanie Owie is our Deputy Director of Government Affairs. Brett Macomber is our Director of Technology. Nicholas Castelli is our Director of Communications. Eric Gopel is our Director of Veterans Affairs. Dr. Swathi Varanasi is our Director of Medicine. Luis Rivera is our Director of Social Equity. MAHA Huck is our Director of Education. Calvin Harris is our Director of Strategy and Development. And my name is Ian Rassman, and I'm the Executive Director here at Los Angeles Norml, and truly your very grateful host today. So to kick off our program, I would like to introduce you to Elisabeth Mack, who's going to bring in the rest of the team. So Elisabeth Mack, RN, BSN, MBA, founded Holistic Caring in 2016 to bridge the gap between conventional and cannabis medicine through education, guidance, and supportive care for patients with product choices, dosages, interactions, and timing. Elisabeth is a provider for the California Board of Registered Nursing and authored a curriculum to approach cannabis by emphasizing holistic and functional medicine. She is now training the entire audience of healthcare to become a cannabis health coach. Elisabeth.
Thank you, Ian, for the warm welcome, and welcome to all of the rest of you. My job now is to bring up Dr. Swathi. So Dr. Swathi is with us, and she, for Dr. Swathi for short, she's an award-winning bilingual pharmacist specializing in integrative health and botanical medicine. She's a plant-based wellness expert, a medical consultant for CBD, adaptogen, and health food brands, a published clinical researcher, and a multimedia content contributor. Emphasizing an innovative and evidence-based approach, Dr. Swathi is passionate about educating practitioners, students, and patients on natural medicines and empowering everyone to be the best, most authentic version of themselves.
Oh, thank you so much, Elisabeth. All right, so I am going to introduce Stephanie. You want to turn your video on? Stephanie Owie serves as the Director of Government Affairs and Licensing for Amuse, which is an e-commerce cannabis delivery company based in Los Angeles. Stephanie was previously the Southern California Regional Policy Manager for Flow Canna, and prior to working in cannabis, Stephanie came from the state and local politics. During her 5-year tenure at Los Angeles City as the policy advisor, she focused on issues of renewable energy, environmental justice, and public works. As a political activist and social justice advocate, Stephanie has served on the executive board of the LA County Young Democrats for 8 years, most recently as the VP of Outreach. As a proud graduate of UCLA, Stephanie earned her BA in Asian American Studies and a minor in Urban and Regional Planning.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swathi. Appreciate that warm introduction. I have the pleasure of introducing MAHA Huck. MAHA Huck started her work in cannabis in Los Angeles medical dispensaries in 2012, where she focused on management and operations. She later developed legal cannabis businesses in several states and countries through a Denver-based consulting firm. She then conducted cannabis research and specialized in business development and marketing at the first ISO-accredited analytical cannabis testing lab. MAHA is also the founder and president of Canna Club, a collegiate organization focused on cannabis education, advocacy, and opportunities for the next generation. Under her leadership, Canna Club expanded to over 20 universities across the nation with over 5,500 members since starting at her alma mater, UCLA. Go Bruins! Her undergraduate was in mathematics and sociology. MAHA has her MS in pharmacology studies, concentrating on medical cannabis sciences and therapeutics at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, the nation's first graduate program dedicated to studying cannabis. MAHA is also the president of the Hospitality Group, THG, an LA-based cannabis consumption lounge operation and business development firm, bringing together two worlds of hospitality and cannabis. With clients in 10 cities, she is slated to assist lounge openings in California and Michigan.
Thank you, Stephanie. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, keynote woman of the day, Shelly McKay. Woo! Yes, let's do some clapping, the little clap icon. So Shelly McKay is co-founder and health and wellness director of Cannabis Works, one of my favorite dispensaries out here in SoCal. It is a fully licensed cannabis dispensary, and she has dedicated and driven cannabis entrepreneurship with over 5 years of combined cannabis experience, which ranges from business development, investor, product specialist, patient support, patient advocacy, is also an educator, cannabis coach, utilizing product knowledge guidance as well. So Shelly is deeply invested in the medicinal and research side of cannabis with a real passion for the benefits of cannabis. Under Prop 215, she worked as a patient coach in helping clients understand the benefits of cannabis tinctures. Under Prop 64, Shelly co-founded Cannabis Works and Wellness Works. While working as Cannabis Works COO, she identified the need for educating and destigmatizing the plant. In March 2020, under SB 34, Shelly started a compassionate program for veterans to access cannabis, medicinal cannabis free of charge. Under this program, through Cannabis Works, Shelly has donated cannabis to more than 100 veterans regularly. She has worked with countless cultivators, distributors, and vendors to find the best methods to ensure patients get knowledgeable information and reliable, clean, and tested products. So without further ado, you got Shelly McKay here. So give her a round of applause where you're at. And here we are, Women in Cannabis. Welcome, Shelly.
Thank you, Maha. And thank you for having me on panel again. I really, really appreciate it. Looking forward to today.
We are too. So let's start off with some Q&A here for these lovely ladies. Our first question is really, what brought you to the industry? How did you find cannabis? And how did your journey begin? And so I'm going to tee it off here. So I found cannabis, well, of course, in high school and college, but then left it alone for many years. And January of 2015, after some surgery, I was at my chiropractor's office and I had a medical massage, and the girl was using CBD in the oil. And this was a crude version of just coconut oil and cannabis flowers that were cooked down into a topical. And I said, hey, what is this? It smells funny. And she said, it's CBD, it's cannabis. And I said, well, what's that for? And she goes, well, it's going to reduce your inflammation, get you back to that pre-surgical arm faster and more effectively. And maybe help you not use so many Motrin. And I said, wow, sign me up and tell me more. And, then I got bit. I was studying everything I could read. And I went to the library, got every book on cannabis, started looking at online journals, discovered the ECS, which nobody told me about in my 34 years in nursing, and started to take some CBD oils and tinctures and Cannamin and flash-dried CBD, and I started to heal. And I said, if I could do this for myself, I have to do this for other people, and started holistic caring so that I could bridge the gap between conventional and cannabis medicine. And so that's my story, how I got into this 6 years ago, and never turning back. So Stephanie, you want to give your journey
Yeah.
into cannabis? Because I know you got to go.
Yeah, of course. I got to get my second vaccine, so I'll be running to do that at 4:30. But happy to share my experience with the plant. So I actually was a late bloomer. I didn't start using cannabis until I was 24. So well after college and high school, I was a very stressed out, overworked, underpaid political staffer in City Hall, and it was just getting to me. I was having a hard time sleeping, and my two roommates at the time used cannabis very frequently. And so, I just having trouble sleeping. I was so anxious all the time. And they offered to me one day, and it really opened my eyes. Up until then, I had really bought into the stigma surrounding the cannabis plant. I grew up in a very strict immigrant Catholic family, and there was no talk of drugs. And I was always, very scared, and it wasn't an option for me. And so when my experience told me otherwise, really opened my eyes to the plant. And as cannabis became legal and rec in California, I thought, they need good policy people, steering this emerging industry. And so at the time, I was coming up on 5 years at LA City Hall as a policy advisor. And I found a LinkedIn posting by Flo Khanna. And so that was the start of my cannabis career. And I started in the policy sector. So I'm happy. I'm still here. I'm moving on to licensing as well. So really opened my eyes, and I just want to spread access and to the plant, and happy to be here on LA Norml, because that's our mission.
Great.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Well, real quick, and this could segue into the question for Shelly. My introduction, or rather my start in the cannabis space, was quite unintentional. My mom caught me smoking weed when I was 17, and that ironically is what set forth my career in cannabis. She's a clinical researcher at a cancer hospital, and she demanded a report instead of punishing me. And that is what really sparked my interest in digging deeper into the science of cannabis. And especially, I'm, presenting this to my scientist mother, so I had to impress her. So I came out with a report, and she was thoroughly impressed and asked me to come to the hospital she worked at, where I also volunteered at, to present to her colleagues and some patients who were interested in cannabis therapeutics. And these were all cancer patients. And, this was in 2012, so almost 10 years ago. The topic of cancer and cannabis was emerging, if anything. So, I owe my mom a lot to who's nurtured my interest, who identified my devotion to studying the science of it. And, without her, I don't know if I would have come this far. So this, poses a question to you, Shelly. I know you work with your daughter, and it's amazing how you two work together at the dispensary. And, so two questions. How did you start? And how did you get your daughter to start? How did you get Alex to join? Because that is such an amazing dynamic. And, mother-daughter, such a powerful duo, especially in the space. So please go ahead, Shelly.
Yeah, I'm super grateful to have her with us too. I'm going to go back to the beginning of just even when I found cannabis. So, sadly, I suffered childhood abuse when I was younger. And so by my teen years, 14, I found cannabis. And, whether it was self-medicating, whether it was to sleep or just be happier or have fun, I did that for, maybe 3 years. And then in 1986, I was a senior in high school. I was 17 at the time. My mom found, cannabis paraphernalia papers under the bed, and she was alarmed. And so she put me into drug rehab. And that was in, during the Reagan era. It was the failed war on drugs, of course. And she put me into rehab, and that's where I met my husband, who I'm now still married to. So we met at 17 in drug rehab. We both stayed sober for 24 years. So we, got married, bought the house, had children, and then I knew personally I would return to cannabis. I didn't know how or why, but I knew it was something that I wanted it to be part of my life. So, you know, then what led me into just the path that I'm on. So once I started using cannabis, that was about 2009. 2012, a really, really good friend of mine named Eddie Peterson was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. And, you know, Kaiser was like, look, you've got about 3 months to live. It was such an advanced stage that, you know, they were like, hey, you know, settle your affairs. And so my husband, through a group of collective friends, they started growing cannabis to create RSO for Eddie because we'd read about that. And this was back in 2012, 13. And to see the benefit of what that oil did for him, I mean, sadly, he did pass away, but it extended his life beyond his, beyond his diagnosis. And it was just, I saw the miracle of like how it improved his quality of life. So then that led us to want to stay in the industry. So when Measure BB was passed in Santa Ana for medicinal dispensaries, we, with partners, put in for lottery. And that was what got us to the dispensary aspect. Now, my driving force then came from my own also healing, because through the years of 2009 and 2013, I had undergone a series of more than 5 orthopedic surgeries, including a forced hysterectomy due to endometriosis. So I had neck surgery, shoulder, elbow, knee. I mean, I was on this like hamster wheel, this pharmaceutical nightmare of cortisone injections, failed PT, you know, just the course you're on. And it always led to a surgery. And so once, you know, it kind of coincided at the same time when Eddie started to use these oils, I thought, well, maybe I can get off some of these pills. So when I started substituting oils without really even knowing a lot about cannabinoids yet, and found the benefit, and I was able to eliminate, you know, medications. And also my stomach, I've also had Nissen spendiplication, which is a surgical procedure for GERD. So I had like major GI issues with all those pharmaceuticals. Once I started and switched over primarily to cannabinoids and oils, it disappeared. Also, my sleep improved. My anxiety levels were down. There were so many improvements. So I knew once we entered that space and we wanted to open that dispensary, that we were going to approach it as medicine, as a supplement for wellness. And so, it just so happened that Alex, my daughter, she was a horticulture major. She was very interested in plants. And so at the time, you know, it was all hands on deck when we opened up. It was just kind of crazy in 2018. It was like, I had my niece working there, my nephew, my sister, my daughter. It was just like family, like, let's do this, you know? And so that's kind of how Alex got thrown into it. Not knowing what her place was going to even be there. And so she wasn't as comfortable working with clients on the floor. She said, hey, I'd rather buy, if there's a spot for me in inventory or buying, that's where I'd love to be. So, and she has just done an amazing, amazing job for us, you know, in sourcing. Just, she doesn't, you know, it's difficult to run, you know, the dispensary with all the products running through it. And there's a lot of product out there, but she really, really tries to source for some pretty great smaller mom and pop farmers, sustainable, like just people that are doing the right thing. So I'm super, super grateful to have her there too.
And we're just missing Dr. Swathi. You want to talk about how you fell into this?
Yeah, sure. So I was someone who was always interested in the preventative side of healthcare. Of course, I went through pharmacy school and I was really looking for an outlet in preventative healthcare and botanical medicine. And so I decided that I would start with now one of my favorite people, one of my mentors. We started the first integrative health residency program for pharmacists interested in pursuing this very odd, unconventional path. And so a lot of that learning came into cannabis. And so I had always been interested and I had like heard about it. I had, of course, used it recreationally, but I was always more interested in finding out like why it worked the way that it did. And so residency gave me an amazing opportunity and springboard to spend so much time just delving into that. And then a lot of that came too with answering patient questions as well as other practitioner questions. So I had like my level of interest, and then plus there was like this increasing demand of people that just wanted to know more and more information about it. And so that just like even helped me look farther and farther into the research and into the evidence. And of course, like from my education and everything, like I'm always interested in looking at the study, and I'm always interested in seeing, you know, what's been like worked before, what's been studied, and then also how that's translating to patient care. And then all the ongoing studies now are just amazing. Like I cannot wait to hear everything that's going to come out soon. So it has so much potential as a plant, as well as like synergizing with so many other botanicals too that I get to talk to patients and other practitioners about. So it really was that combination of like a genuine interest and then that patient and practitioner demand.
Thank you. And thank you, Shelly. You know, I love hearing your story. And I just realized I think I've had every one of your surgeries, the Nissen fundoplication, the hysterectomy, and then all of the orthopedics on top of it. So yeah, it's crazy to be a clinician, but to also be a patient. And, you know, with that, you know, we'll pivot into question number 2, because, you know, this is patient-centered care. You know, I've been, if I count my years as a candy striper and through high school, you know, at 14, I've literally been in healthcare for 40 years. And I can't tell you how we've always been talking about patient-centered care, and it's never patient-centered care. Take these pills, have these tests, get these procedures, good luck, right? And it never does work. And 80% of our healthcare is chronic, and that doesn't work for, you know, the traditional rat wheel that we've all been on. So the second question that we have to all discuss is, you know, why is the advancement of medical cannabis important to women worldwide? So I'll start again. And, you know, I made some notes. So women to me are the gatekeepers of health. If you think about the way that we take care of our families, the men are out making money, caring for the house, whatever they have to do, right? Traditionally, of course, all bets are off in modern society. But ideally, you know, the women are really responsible for the health and the nurturing and the care. And so when somebody gets sick, it falls on us to make those arrangements and to have that discernment and the knowledge and the intuitive healing practices that we can bring to our family, right? And so whether you're a young woman and you're dealing with, you know, anxiety and stress, and you've got to sleep and have relaxation and coping, or maybe endometrial issues, and you've got, you know, some bad issues like that, or just a regular wellness, recovery from sports. Whether you're a middle-aged woman, now you've got all those same conditions, plus you've got responsibility for kids, and not only yours, but it takes a village, so that your friends and siblings and cousins and their kids, and somebody's going to have autism, like 1 out of 60 are having autism, epilepsy, 1 out of 100. You know, we have these pediatric cancers. So kids are going to need to be folded in here. Plus, middle-aged women are looking after their family, their parents, right? And their grandparents. And with Parkinson's and MS and Alzheimer's, there are clinical applications for cannabinoids. And then for older women, you know, caring for your peers, talking about menopause, talking about all of the different ways that quality of life could be impacted. You could reduce all of the symptoms. You could reduce some of that polypharmacy. And every single time, you know, I have patient visits, and I just had another one where, you know, 2 years post-stroke, 5 seizures a week. Now we're down to 2. There were 5 different blood pressures and statins. Now those are down to 2. And guess what? Cognition's improving. Quality of life is improving. Energy is improving. Sleep's improving. And the doctor, you know, it's like, when are we going to truly intersect? When we deschedule and we can have these conversations legitimately as clinicians. But, you know, in the meantime, this has to stay patient-centered care. And so we have to get the women out there to understand this and to be empowered to learn and to take this option. And so that's why I believe that women worldwide need to be privy to what we do and why it matters. So who'd like to go next on that answer? Why is it important to women worldwide?
I can go next, because I would like to piggyback off that, you know, just that you say, I mean, I feel like the future of cannabis is female. You know, we are the caretakers, like you were saying. we will go to the ends of the earth to find something that will help our family, you know. And I mean, an example, you've got all those mothers out there that are advocates for their children, just like, you know, like Paige Figgy with Charlotte, you know, who had these seizures. And you've got Wendy Turner, whose son Colton had just incredibly horrible Crohn's, and she relocated to Colorado, you know. And then you have, of course, Tracy Ryan, who's been treating her daughter with cannabinoids, and she has a product line now that she started for that. And there's so much care. And you know, I think that these mothers, that they wouldn't stop until they found this alternative. We have a lot of that in the industry, you know, and like Miko Perez with her son Joey, whose son is on the spectrum, you know. But we need more research to help substantiate cannabis for women's health, period. You know, we know that cannabinoids are found in mother's breast milk to promote suckling. We know that we have these cannabinoids for a reason. Can cannabis be used? This is a taboo subject. Can it be used during pregnancy for morning sickness? You know, there is nobody that's going to recommend that. I mean, how do you research that? But we need to know, how can cannabis be helpful for fibroids, painful menstruation, endometriosis, menopause? There's a lot that can be done. You know, I think that it's crucial. It's crucial to bring medicine to women in this space, especially with cannabis.
And, you know, speaking of research, you know, at UCLA, UCLA Cannabis Research Initiative, where I used to work at, Dr. Ziva Cooper is the interim director right now, and something she's pushing for is researching on cannabis effects, sex-dependent effects of cannabis and cannabinoids. So it is to observe how, like, everything, all these research projects are designed to fit the male body, male physique, etc. They don't consider female as the main model for their research design. So with this particular research project that's happening at UCLA, we'll be investigating, like, how does it affect women differently than it does for men? And I think that's, you know, an imperative thing to look into, because, you know, as y'all said, Elisabeth and Shelly, there's, you know, we have other issues which cannabis does help with that are particular for women. So, you know, definitely a need. And I am happy to see, you know, right here in SoCal, in LA, that there is cannabis research that is forward on those sex-dependent effects. So, you know, hope to see more in that. But, you know, as soon as results come out of that, it'll be a game changer for our understanding how cannabis can help us out with our reproductive health, with our any cross sections of the endocannabinoid system with reproductive systems. So, you know, hopefully it's coming soon.
Can I ask, MAHA, are there federal funds for your research?
So it is an NIH funded project, National Institute of Health. Yes. So it is a fund. They have a grant. They have a cumulative total grant of $22 million. Some of it is allocated to this sex-dependent effects of cannabis research project. So they have funding, it is federally funded, but then again, when you think of federally funded cannabis research, you're limited to just University of Mississippi weed. That's the only place you can access cannabis from for research purposes. But it is a step forward to start looking at what is in women. You know, how does cannabis affect women? And, you know, to start off the research, Dr. Ziva Cooper actually had to research the negatives of it. Are women more susceptible to cannabis use disorder than men are? What was actually found is men are more susceptible to it than women. So, so researching the bad, then you can start researching the good. Hopefully this new research will bring out some answers for us.
Absolutely. And not a minute too early. I received a call this morning from a young woman, 30 years old, and she's breastfeeding. Her daughter's 9 months old. And she was in tears asking me if, you know, smoking pot to relax her, and she's got postpartum depression, is going to be harmful to her little girl. And, you know, I gave her my best judgment, and I said, you know, we don't have these studies, but, you know, women have been using this for thousands of years, and, you know, kids are generally okay. But, you know, it's something that, you know, all of the medical societies are saying absolutely not. to ever use it if you have, you know, pregnancy or breastfeeding. And then the other caveat that I gave her is your greatest risk is CPS, right? Because we still live in a society where somebody will call and turn you in. And so don't be too public about using cannabis and breastfeeding, because we are still in that time, which is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to add, I'm so glad you guys are talking about research, because I think that that's the first step. And of course, women are not little men. That's something I heard recently. And I was like, yes, exactly. Because I think that so many studies are just like, oh, just give the women less, you know, kind of a thing, or like that's like kind of the perception. But now that there will be research, there is research going on, it will be published, that a lot of that will change and we'll have more concrete data. So that's amazing. But then from the research too, I did want to mention that I think it's so important about the education when it comes to cannabis. I mean, patient education, I mean, practitioner education, like everyone in between. I just think that there's such a void in that right now. And so that's why it's so great to be on a board with so many people that are also so passionate about the use of cannabis and other botanicals, of course, and just like the health and wellness of our patients and of our population, because it's so important that if we are able to have that voice, that also other people will learn from that, and then more people will start talking about it. And so it's going to be a domino effect. And so it's great to be like at the start of the dominoes.
Yeah, and well, from a harm reduction standpoint, the education is going to continue to move this industry forward. Going back to the conversation I also finished up with, you know, are you using any CBD oils to mitigate the anxiety? No, never tried it before. I'm just smoking THC pot. And I'm like, okay, maybe you can get some 1-to-1 strains, lessen the THC a little bit, and then add in some CBD oils. And, you know, and this is why education matters, why Cannabis Works matters, why all of these places where people can go and find, you know, some quality guidance on how to interlace these products, because it's not one thing. I almost always start every lecture with cannabis is not one thing. It's a plethora of things, and has all of these different product types and routes of administration and different use patterns and effects. So you have to discuss everything in a big discussion, and education has to lead the way. Once you get stigma out of the way, and education will destigmatize it, and hopefully NIDA will stop studying only the harms, whether it's, you know, for women and breastfeeding or chronic pain, you know, which I posted on Facebook the other day. You know, they're still using the NIDA cigarettes, which aren't, you know, effective. And then, you know, you say it doesn't work, but we have all these other things that do work just fine. So, Shelly, what are you seeing when it comes to women coming in asking for questions on breastfeeding and pregnancy? Are there a lot?
Oh, she needs to be unmuted.
How'd she get muted?
Oh, there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, we do have people that come to us. And of course, you know, when there's a mom or a parent that shows up and they are looking to medicate their child. I mean, you mentioned CPS, that's a very, very real issue. This is still a Schedule I narcotic. So we definitely side with telling them to go out, see a doctor, go get a medical recommendation to administer that to your child. You know, so we're trying to give guidance in that respect. But, you know, as far as like having a parent medicate their kid with cannabis, that is not something I'm going to like, I won't be the specialist to do that. You know, we have the oils there at the dispensary for them to come get, you know, like Elisabeth, you know, you can send in a patient or two, or Dr. Goldstein will refer in, you know, for her pediatric cancers for the RSO. But now when it comes to like things that are taboo, you know, we'll give them guidelines, we'll give them research sites to, you know, we've got a lot of resources that we'll hand out, and we just want to put the education, not only give you the education, the resources, but put it on you to now go do that research and, you know, like spread it like wildfire, so we all can understand, you know, what's out there, and what just let's all be advocates for it, you know.
Definitely. I have a bit of a different question here to kind of wrap this all up. So you're a female operator in the cannabis space. There's not that many retail dispensary, medical dispensary operators that are female, especially out here in California. Like first off, like how did you make this happen? Like in a boys world, like it's, you know, essentially like if you go into a room of cannabis operators in SoCal, it's going to be mostly men. How'd you break through that? And how, like, what advice do you have for any aspiring female operators like myself? I would love to have a shop one day, or cannabis consumption lounge, we'll see. But what advice do you have for women who want to be what you're doing right now?
So, you know, I will say that the way I got to be, how I came to this was, it was definitely fortunate. And, you know, it was, we at the time didn't know what it would lead to as far as, you know, California passing Prop 64. We were just hopeful that we would be able to open a dispensary in Santa Ana under Measure BB. And so perseverance is huge though, because even though we won the lottery out of the 20 to open that Measure BB dispensary, we couldn't open. Because the neighbor next door, it was antiquated bylaws. They went in and changed it while we were, you know, wanting to open, and they were trying to bar us from opening. So we persevered. I mean, we didn't think we were going to get open, but we persevered. So, you know, and then it led to Prop 64. And then of course, Santa Ana said, okay, these Measure BBs are now. So I would consider it to be luck at that point. You know, we didn't really have that sort of foresight knowing it was going to go all the way it did, you know. And I kind of think it might have been easier working under Prop 215. You know, there were less taxes and not too many regulations at the time, you know. But you know, I would just say definitely there are so many opportunities in this industry. It is almost overwhelming how much opportunity there is. Go for it. You know, that just educate yourself, you know, network, join advocacy organizations, get to know people, you know, and then you will see the opportunities will present themselves.
And also realize that everything is temporary, right? You know, so take this post today, get yourself some experience. 6 months later, then you can switch and change it up to something else, and then do something else. And I sure do miss the Prop 215 days, though. I had my own collective for years until I had to shut that down. And so, you know, those were the good old days. But you know, it's a dicey world. But insert yourself wherever you can, and then just keep moving up.
Yep.
Yeah. MAHA got muted again.
Thanks. No, very well said, Shelly. You know, it's perseverance and luck, the ingredients of a successful business like yours. Honestly, like it's very impressive to see, you know, women taking charge in that space, because, you know, 10 years ago, or not 10 years ago, sorry, 9 years ago, don't want to make myself too old. So 9 years ago is when I first started working at a dispensary. I joined in as a bud tender, and, you know, I was, I don't want to say forced, but essentially I was forced to wear a certain type of uniform that appeals men in a way. And there was only female bud tenders allowed. Like the job listing itself said female bud tenders only. And it was a gross environment, but, you know, I was adamant on changing it. And, you know, thankfully I did get to change it. I became the GM of that dispensary in a short amount of time. And, you know, it goes back to what you're saying is you got to be persistent and rise above it and just get through it. And like, it's great to see women leadership now, because back then it was so, just so, I want to say, infiltrated by this machismo, patriarchal environment that felt so hard to break. You know, only the bud tenders can be the one, the females, and the managers were the guys, and the owners were always the guys. But, you know, you're making a lot of great moves, inspiring moves, like especially for myself, like seeing a woman in leadership for a dispensary. I never would have thought it would have happened back then, but I'm glad to see it today. So thank you, Shelly, for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for all of this discussion. And yeah, I remember when I said I was a nurse or a cannabis nurse, and somebody says, "Oh, a 420 nurse." And I'm like, no, because I've seen all of the 420 nurses, and I'm not going to wear short shorts and cleavage. No, that's just not me.
I love that you bring it up, because it just like goes to show like how far we've come from that. Like, of course, I think they still exist, but that was the scene. That was the vibe back then, was you had those sexy bud tenders and like 420 nurses in there, you know, that are scantily clad. But, you know, look at us now. You know, Shelly, you got a shop. You're always, you know, looking great with your KW shirt. And like, I love to see the evolution. And, you know, I'm glad to have all of us be here too.
Yeah. So on that note, we've got 13 minutes left. Brett and Ian, what do you say we turn cameras and mics on and invite some of the other ladies to maybe talk about what they're doing in the industry, since we have several guests on the line today? Well, we're all on mute. And so yeah, okay, there we go. Their cameras are coming back on. Yeah, and you know, when I think about cannabis, think about, you know, MJ Biz, all of the hedge fund guys. It's still like what, 85% white men, and they're all like hedge fund traders. You know, it's just big money getting into here. Big alcohol's on the way, big tobacco's on the way, big pharma's on the way. So the beverages are booming. Philip Morris or Altria is going to start combining in you know, spliffs and making, you know, cannabis and tobacco one of these days. And of course, you know, big pharma's looking at a way to get in. So what are some of the other lovely ladies that are our guests doing in the cannabis industry who would like to share?
If anyone's having trouble with unmuting themselves, just raise your hand and we'll have someone unmute you. Oh, I see Alisha Diaz has her hand raised. If someone can please unmute her.
Oh,
And
I did. I'm unmuted.
oh, you're muted.
Thank-
Great. And
thank
Joanne,
you.
we'll get to you shortly.
So what I'm doing personally in the industry is just trying to have a voice and keep standing up for the wellness aspect of the industry. But I just want to make a suggestion that if anybody knows any women that have the money to come in and fund and invest, I would love to have more women involved in fronting the money, and people of color. I think that's going to really help our wellness side of things when we have a diverse amount of investors into the industry.
Definitely. Yeah, do not see enough female investors in cannabis, but you know, there are definitely attempts at that, and great events organized around it too. I think through ArcView Group, they have an event series called Women's Investor Network. But I do agree there needs to be a little more diversity as well in the in just the women community alone in cannabis. Like, there isn't as much diversity, women of color investors and operators. But you know, here's to, you know, looking forward to that. I think it'll go up for sure. Joanne, oh, you're unmuted. Okay, great. You wanted to go ahead? Oh, sure. Joanne.
Joan from Hempstead.
Oh, great. Yeah, Joan.
Joan, sorry. Joan, you wanted to go ahead and speak.
So yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. Yeah, Joan. Yeah, so I'm with a company called Hemp Staff, and we're a recruitment and training company specializing in the cannabis and hemp industry. And we are nationwide and international. We're in Europe, we're in Jamaica, Canada, and South America, as well as nationwide all the way out to Hawaii and Alaska. I'm happy to report that at least 40% of my placements are normally women and people of color. So hopefully we're doing our little bit to contribute to diversifying the industry. So I'm just happy to be here and see so many women, you know, participating, because we do definitely, as you said, in the industry. So thank you.
Anybody else want to come off mute?
Yeah, anyone who wants to speak up, please raise your hand or even put a comment in the chat box and we'll unmute you. Oh, there's Michelle.
Hey, Michelle.
Would you like to say something? Oh, hey, Tasha. So would y'all like,
Tasha.
I'll just say thank you. You guys are rocking it as always. I love all the friendly faces. Keep crushing it. I mean, you already know I'm fans of every single one of you. So, I mean, great job, great event. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, MC.
I was just waving at Michelle.
Well, Tasha, you always have something to say.
I do have something to say, actually. I wasn't, but I will. But hi, Michelle. I'll say that first. How are you? You know, I'm new in the industry. You know, it's been about a year now. And one thing that I think has been very interesting for me to watch is how women dominated it is and the potential for, so as the industry grows and as it becomes increasingly women dominated, what is going to be the pushback and propaganda that will come out against it? Because as we know, there are figures out there that are not particularly fond of women. And so I think that not only do we have to fight a stigma for a plant that is racially motivated, but then there could be a gender war with that as well, a sex and gender war with that. And so I think that as we move forward, we need to keep that in our minds, that those narratives could eventually play out in the future. So I was going to say that.
It's an interesting point. You know, when you think of women in healthcare, you know, they were either a nurse in the hospital being told what to do and follow orders, or they were a midwife. And what were the midwife? They were always, you know, sort of denigrated and it was not on par with everything else. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, women working in cannabis, to see how it evolves. And this is an evolving thing. This is like a day by day. We're always different every day. So you just show up and give your best, and don't, you know, take it personally. Just keep going and prove them wrong. Mm-hmm.
Do we have another potential speaker?
Oh,
there she is.
Okay, Louie.
Hi, I'm LOELY. Hi, Shelly. I don't know if she's there. I haven't seen everybody in such a long time. Hi, my name is LOELY BURGOS. I'm a independent contractor in the industry as a brand ambassador is what I started as. And primarily because I am a newly second act starting co-parenting mom. So I'm starting my new journey as a single mom. And so I became a patient back in 2016. I used cannabis in all of 2017 along with talk therapy to wean myself off of about 6 different medications, including Celexa, which had brought me to the point of suicidal thoughts on a regular basis. So I knew at that point that I needed to make a huge change. And coming from a very traditional, I'm Caribbean, so I'm from the Caribbean, and a very traditional family that listens to doctors, and whatever the doctor says, you do what the doctor says. So I was always listening to the doctors. And then finally, though, luckily I had a doctor who was kind enough to be transparent and honest with me when I asked him, I'm considering cannabis. What do you think? And he just said, well, I can't give you a recommendation, but I have patients who have weaned, who are just using cannabis now, and they're perfectly happy. And so I thought that was all I needed to know. And at that point, I started my journey. And since then, like many of you and like Shelly explained with her story, also had the opportunity to work with a terminally ill patient with cancer, and was able to help her in her last 5 months of life. And that was kind of like the nail that just like solidified, that's it, I'm going into cannabis. There's just nothing else I can see myself doing. My previous life, I was working in the music industry. I was a publicist, and I was having a wonderful time working with lots of great artists, but this now was more of a passion, like my purpose, that I needed to get out there and really make it a point to talk to the people who really needed someone to speak to them and hold their hand. And what better place than, on the floor of a dispensary for 3 hours while I have the chance to sit there and talk to you. And never did I imagine that it would be such a rewarding experience, but it has been, for that very fact that at least once at every single PAD or any event that I go to, I will have at least one person come in who's a patient who's going, I don't know, I don't know, and so I light up like a Christmas tree, because it gives me the chance to finally hold the hand of the person that I'm in this industry for, to say, okay, no worries, we got this. So it's kind of led me towards wanting to start and create my own company, Plant Ed, which happily enough we launched last year at Cannabis Works with Shelly, and we launched with our first workshop, our Cannabis 101 workshop, and of course immediately after that we were shut down. So we've been kind of like trying to reinvent things and move things around, but I'm really super excited to be in this industry, and more than anything, I'm so excited to see so many women in this industry. That's what I'm so passionate about, just seeing how women are really truly taking charge and just cleaning stuff up, and so me as a mommy with tenure and a little bit older than most of the brand ambassadors out there, I don't mind. I go out there and I'm happy to bring a new face and a more friendlier face. And I find that a lot of dispensaries and a lot of customers really respond well to that. And so I'm hoping with my stats, essentially, and with my experience and what many are saying, that it'll help kind of shift the industry a little bit more towards finding brand ambassadors who are more educated in cannabis to educate consumers versus just telling them what the promo of the day is. So
thank you so much for sharing and for that story, and it just really brings me back to compassion, right? So what you provided for 3 hours on that dispensary floor was just sheer compassion, and thank God you had the time and the tenacity to just do that, right? And so that just brings me to one of the points I always want to make, is that we need to have 2 doors to every dispensary. One, a regular door, and one, a medical door, and even one in between for folks like you that have education that aren't medical professionals. But with the cancer patients, we need to be looking at what drugs they're on. We need to be looking at their blood thinners and their immunotherapy and all of the other things, because there are contraindications, and there is a way to do this right, regardless of what conventional medicine still says. And so there needs to be a role for everybody here to play our part and to assert ourselves into really bridging the gap between conventional and cannabis medicine. And it really needs to happen. So, wow, what a great conversation we've had. Any closing thoughts from any of you? Any last comments before we wrap up? It's 5 o'clock.
Well, I just wanted to throw out there that I would love to call attention to Brownie Mary. Let's celebrate her today as well, Mary Jane Rathbun. She is why we have SB 34, which is the compassionate program that we donate to our veterans through or it's compassionate program for California now. But she was just this tireless advocate, incredible woman that helped with, so many of her kids, which were suffering, of course, from AIDS. But I just want to, throw it up to her. And I mean, there's so many other women I could talk about, but definitely want to say that about Mary.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, Dennis Perone and the Brownie Mary Democrats.
Dennis Perone, yeah, Brownie Corral. I mean, their cannabis wouldn't even be in California if it weren't for them. The Compassionate Use Act in 1996, they were incredible. Their efforts were amazing.
Here's to all the pioneers, which we are still. Yeah, so, okay. Well, Ian, any closing words from you as our director? Otherwise, I guess we'll sign off and see you next month for a 421 event. We're going to be coming to you to recap all of our good 420 stories from the day before next month. So please join us all then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow, this has been an inspiring conversation today. It's just what a thrill. I've just been sitting here off camera with the biggest smile on my face, watching all these women come in and really lay it down how it is. It's been awe-inspiring. So I'd really love to thank everybody for coming out today to support Los Angeles Norml. And very importantly, I'd like to remind you that we are a nonprofit, all volunteer organization, and we would truly appreciate any financial support that you're able to provide to help us keep the lights on. So please do consider becoming a card-carrying member of Los Angeles Norml at only $4.20 per month to support the important work that we're doing. I think somebody's dropping in a link into the chat window. I'll tell you what. I haven't checked with the board about this, but I'm sure they're going to support me here. You see this Los Angeles Norml pin? We've got one. All of our board of directors has got one. And what I'm going to do, I don't know if you guys can see that there. What I'm going to do, don't get me in trouble with the team here. But for the first 10 people that sign up as members at $4.20 per month and pay 1 year in advance, so that's $50, I will snail mail you a very limited edition 50th year anniversary pin of our vintage Los Angeles Norml logo. It has the flower and the O, and the pins are very high quality ceramic with a very strong magnetic backing, won't mess up the clothes. The lettering is appropriately green, of course, inlaid into a shiny gold setting honoring our 50th anniversary. These are really, really very limited edition, never been produced before. So please sign up today as a member. Go to lanorml.org and click on the Donate Now button. And from everyone at Los Angeles Norml, we'd like to send a big thank you for being here today. So peace and love to you all.
Thank